Time is humanity's longest-running inside joke. We invented it, we worship it, and we complain there's never enough of it, even though we literally made it up. A day has 24 hours, an hour has 60 minutes, and a minute has 60 seconds. Not because of physics, logic, or divine wisdom, but because some ancient astronomers looked at the sky and said, yeah, that feels symmetrical. Thousands of years later, we still obey their random math. So tonight, let's unwind the story of how humans trapped themselves inside numbers and called it time. Chapter 1. When the sun was the only clock, long before watches, alarms, and calendars, before the ticking of seconds became the soundtrack of our lives, there was only one clock, the sky. When the sun rose, life began. When it fell, everything stopped. That was time. Not in hours, not in minutes, not in numbers, but in cycles. You woke with light, you rested with darkness, and no one ever said, you're late. Because how could you be late when the only schedule was survival? Early humans didn't count seconds. They counted seasons. The bloom of spring, the migration of animals, the return of warmth after cold, that was their calendar. Time was something you felt, not measured. And maybe, just maybe, they understood it better than we ever will. But of course, humans can't leave perfection alone. We started asking questions. When does the sun rise? How long is the day? Can we divide it, control it, own it? And from that first spark of curiosity came one of our strangest obsessions, the attempt to tame time. Around 5,000 years ago, somewhere under the blazing Egyptian sky, priests watched the shadows crawl across temple courtyards. Every morning, the sun appeared from the east, climbed high and fell again, always in rhythm, always predictable. Predictability to humans means power. So they planted tall stones into the ground, obelisks, and marked the shifting shadow. As the sun moved, the shadow crawled over carved lines, dividing the day into pieces. The longer the shadow, the later the hour. And thus the sundial was born, a way to slice the infinite into measurable parts. It was simple, brilliant, and completely useless at night. When the clouds rolled in, time disappeared. Imagine telling your boss, I wasn't late, the sun just didn't show up today. Still, the Egyptians pressed on. They divided the day into 12 hours of light and 12 of darkness, not because the universe demanded it, but because 12 was everywhere. 12 moon cycles, 12 zodiac signs, 12 knuckles on 4 fingers. It was a beautiful number, divisible and harmonious. So that's why a full day became 24 hours, because someone, thousands of years ago, liked symmetry. And somehow, that arbitrary choice still rules every clock in the world today. The beauty of early timekeeping was that it was alive. Time wasn't something mechanical, it was something breathing. The length of your shadow wasn't just a measurement, it was a reflection of your existence. At sunrise, your shadow stretched endlessly long, like a version of yourself reaching into the future. At noon, it vanished beneath you. You and your shadow were one. At sunset, it grew again, pulling you backward into the past. The Egyptians saw this as divine. They believed the sun god Ra was born at dawn, ruled at noon, and died at dusk, only to be reborn again. Each day was a resurrection. To measure time was to measure the life of a god. Meanwhile, farmers measured time by daylight, sailors by stars, merchants by instinct. Meet me when the sun touches the western gate, they'd say. No one needed precision, they needed rhythm. They lived with time, not against it, but humans always want more. Shadows fade, nights come, clouds hide the sun. So they began searching for ways to measure time without light. Enter the water clock, the clepsydra, a bowl with a small hole at the bottom, slowly draining water at a steady pace. When it emptied, 1 hour had passed. It was genius, until someone bumped it, or the temperature changed, or a fly drowned in it. Still, the idea flowed across cultures. Judges in Greece used water clocks to time speeches in court. If your water ran out before your defense ended, well, so did your case. Later came the hourglass, simple, portable, and poetic. Sand fell in graceful silence, 1 grain at a time, marking the slow, irreversible drift of existence. Every falling grain was a second dying. You could flip it, but you couldn't stop it. Maybe that's why humans love hourglasses. They remind us that time is fragile, but also endless, flowing in cycles we can never truly hold. As civilizations grew, every culture invented its own way to count the hours. The Greeks made sundials, shaped like bowls. The Romans installed massive public clocks in forums so everyone could ignore them equally. The Chinese perfected water clocks so complex they became art. Massive bronze towers that dripped water through gears, turning celestial spheres that showed the motion of the heavens. For them, time wasn't just measurement. It was harmony, the pulse of the universe. But no matter how advanced the inventions became, they all bowed to one master, the sun. Noon, that word you hear every day, used to mean the 9th hour after sunrise, not the middle of the day. Monks in medieval Europe divided daylight into intervals for prayer: terce, sext, none. None, pronounced noon, referred to the 9th prayer of the day, around mid-afternoon. But as cities grew busier, people moved the prayers earlier, and eventually noon shifted to mean midday. Language bent time and time bent language, until both fit our convenience. By the Middle Ages, every village had a church bell marking its own version of truth. Each town rang its bells slightly differently. If you traveled far enough, you could literally time travel, a few minutes forward or backward, just by walking. There was no universal time, only local confidence. If your clock said it was noon, then by God, it was noon. And who was going to argue? The sun? Over the centuries, time stopped being something we watched and became something we owned. We drew lines on stone, carved marks on water clocks, etched notches into candle wax, dividing light and darkness as if they belonged to us. That was the beginning of abstraction, time turning from an experience into a concept. When humans decided they could divide the day into perfect pieces, they were doing more than counting. They were rewriting reality. Every clock since, every tick and every tock, traces its ancestry back to that moment when someone dared to believe sunlight could be tamed. And from that act of arrogance or brilliance or both, the modern world began ticking. And yet, the greatest irony remains: the sun never cared. It rises and falls the same way it always has, completely indifferent to our numbers and machines. We built our civilization around the illusion of control, but every dawn is a quiet reminder that we are still just creatures living by its grace. Early humans looked up and felt awe. We look up and check the weather app. Maybe that's progress. Maybe it's just a more complicated form of ignorance. Either way, the sun keeps moving and we keep chasing it, marking, dividing, measuring, believing we've mastered time, when in truth, we're still just watching shadows crawl across the ground. Chapter 2. 60. The Babylonian Curse. Thousands of years before wristwatches and atomic clocks, before the digital countdowns that blink us toward deadlines, there was a civilization that decided how the world would measure time, and they did it with a number that makes no sense at all: 60. The Babylonians, brilliant skywatchers and master mathematicians, lived in Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers. They spent their nights staring at the heavens, charting the movements of stars and planets. They didn't just watch the sky, they organized it, turned it into geometry, divided circles, tracked eclipses, and mapped the rhythm of the cosmos. But their greatest invention, and perhaps their greatest crime, was the sexagesimal system, base 60 math. That's right, not 10 like we use now, not 100 like sane people might prefer, but 60. Because to them, 60 was a perfect number. It divides evenly into 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. You could cut a circle into halves, thirds, quarters, fifths, or sixths without breaking a sweat. It was neat, it was symmetrical, it was absurdly over-engineered, and it stuck. When the Babylonians adopted the Egyptian idea of dividing the day into 24 hours, they decided each hour should be divided into 60 smaller units, and each of those into another 60, and just like that, minutes and seconds were born. Not by divine design, not by scientific precision, but by mathematical convenience and cultural inertia. Every time you look at a clock, you're not looking at an instrument of modern precision. You're staring at a 4,000-year-old Babylonian spreadsheet. Think about that. The entire planet organizes its life, its schedules, its flights, its sleep, its heartbeats, around the whims of a civilization that disappeared before the alphabet existed. We text each other, "Be there in 5 minutes," without realizing that 5 only makes sense because some ancient merchant wanted a number that played nice with fractions. The Babylonians didn't care about human convenience. They cared about the sky. Their number system came from their obsession with astronomy. A full circle had 360 degrees, a perfect multiple of 60, and that circle represented the heavens. They saw time and geometry as the same thing. To measure the stars was to measure time. The movement of the sun through the zodiac, the tilt of the equinoxes, the cycles of the moon, all of it could be described with the number 60. It was cosmic math, mystical and elegant. For them, it worked beautifully. For us, it became a nightmare of conversions. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day. Everything in base 10, except the one system we use every day, the one that runs our lives, is in base 60. Because humans apparently can't resist tradition even when it's nonsense. You'd think, over millennia, we would have fixed it. The French tried during their revolution. They created a decimal time system, dividing the day into 10 hours, each hour into 100 minutes, each minute into 100 seconds. It was perfect on paper. Rational, logical, elegant. People hated it. Factories refused to use it, farmers ignored it, and the whole idea died in less than 2 years. Humanity collectively said, we'd rather be wrong together than right alone, and so the Babylonian curse continued. It's funny though. The Babylonians weren't trying to invent confusion. They were trying to understand the universe. They looked up at the stars and saw patterns that repeated, not exactly, but closely enough to measure. They believed the heavens ran on divine harmony, and numbers were the key. To them, 60 wasn't random, it was sacred, a symbol of completeness. They believed the cosmos itself was built around cycles divisible by 60, and so they carved their numbers into clay tablets, baked them in the desert sun, and unknowingly programmed the operating system for human time. Their writing is gone, their temples are dust, but their math still beats inside every ticking clock. Imagine how absurd it is. An ancient priest in Babylon, kneeling under a starlit sky, drawing circles in the sand to predict an eclipse, and that gesture eventually becomes the reason your meeting starts at 9 a.m. sharp. We measure seconds because he counted the stars. We rush to catch a train because he divided the night. Somewhere in the middle of the Fertile Crescent, the rhythm of the modern world was born. Not with metal gears or digital circuits, but with clay and geometry. Their calendar, too, influenced ours. The Babylonians used a lunar calendar, 12 months of 30 days, another tribute to the number 60. When that didn't line up with the solar year, they simply added more days whenever things got messy. There was no exact science, just approximation wrapped in ritual. It worked well enough, and that's really all humanity has ever needed. Well enough. Precision, after all, is overrated when you have rituals to make you feel secure. In their temples, priests kept time by watching the sky and pouring water. They didn't just observe, they interpreted. Time was divine language, and their duty was to read it. The movement of Venus, the brightness of Mars, the phases of the moon, these were messages from the gods. Time wasn't neutral. It was sacred, alive, full of meaning. Every second was an omen. Compare that to now, when seconds are stripped of poetry, reduced to deadlines and countdowns. The Babylonians gave time a soul. We turned it into currency. There's a poetic cruelty in how their system outlived them. When the empire fell, when the Persians came, when the Greeks rewrote the stars with their own names, the number 60 refused to die. It survived translation, conquest, religion, language. It jumped from clay tablets to papyrus to parchment to paper to pixels. And now it glows on your phone, marking each second of your scrolling. You think you're living in the future, but you're following a rule written in mud 4,000 years ago. Sometimes I imagine what it would be like if we could speak to those Babylonian astronomers. If we told them, your math became the backbone of global civilization. Every plane, every satellite, every stock market, everything runs on your system. They'd probably nod wisely and say, of course it does. Then ask if we've learned to count in base 60 yet. And we'd have to admit, no, we haven't. We just memorized enough of it to keep up appearances. There's a strange beauty in that, though. The persistence of error. The way human ideas, once they take root, become immortal. The Babylonians didn't just divide time. They built the habit of division. They taught us to think in slices, to separate the infinite into measurable moments. They turned eternity into arithmetic, and we never stopped. Every scientific instrument, every calendar, every clock, every to-do list, it all stems from that ancient urge to make order out of the sky. Maybe that's the real curse. Not the number 60 itself, but the idea that the universe can be neatly divided into human categories. That if we just measure precisely enough, we can control it. That's what timekeeping is, really. an act of arrogance disguised as discipline. We measure time not because we understand it, but because we're afraid of it. The Babylonians made numbers their shield against chaos. We made clocks, and yet for all our progress, we haven't escaped their spell. We still build our lives on invisible cycles. We still draw circles, on clocks, on calendars, on maps. We still believe that if we can just fit everything inside the circle, we'll be safe from the unknown. But time, like the sky, doesn't care about circles. It expands, stretches, bends, and laughs quietly while we pretend it's linear. The next time you check the time, look at your phone, your watch, your screen, remember that you're not just seeing a number. You're seeing the ghost of Babylon. Every second that passes is written in their language. Every minute you waste is counted by their system. You are living inside their equation, and there's no way out. The Babylonians may be gone, but their rhythm remains, the steady, ancient heartbeat of 60 that echoes through every ticking clock on Earth. Chapter 3. The Age of Bells, Sand, and Chaos. By the time humanity reached the Middle Ages, the sun was no longer enough to tell time. We had built walls, cities, kingdoms, and empires, and somewhere inside those walls, the day began to shrink. We no longer lived with the rhythm of light and darkness. We lived by the sound of bells. The first mechanical clocks didn't appear in royal courts or universities. They appeared in monasteries, because nothing motivates invention quite like religion and guilt. Monks needed to pray 7 times a day, at dawn, at noon, at dusk, and in between, and they needed something more reliable than the weather. Clouds couldn't be trusted with holiness. So the monks built machines that could count without light, wheels, gears, and weights pulled by gravity, ticking in the darkness like metal hearts. These early clocks didn't have hands or faces. They were enormous wooden creatures that lived in towers, striking bells every hour, or what the monks decided was an hour. Time then wasn't universal. It wasn't even regional. It was personal. Every monastery, every town, every church had its own version of time. If one bell rang at 6 and another at 7, no one cared. Everyone was equally wrong, and therefore, everyone was right. People didn't look at time. They listened to it. The sound of bells ruled everything. The morning bell told you to open the market. The noon bell meant stop for food. The evening bell told you to go home. And at night, the silence itself was a kind of time, an agreement that the world would pause until dawn. For centuries, that worked beautifully. But then humans, being humans, began to move. Trade routes expanded. Merchants traveled from one city to another. And suddenly time became a problem. If you left one town at 9 o'clock and arrived at another at 9 o'clock, but it took you 4 hours to get there, then what the hell just happened? Time didn't match anymore. Every city lived in its own bubble. The sun rose earlier in the east, later in the west, and clocks followed local skies. Noon in Paris was not noon in London. In fact, it wasn't even close. The problem grew worse with the rise of science. Astronomers tried to compare measurements, sailors needed navigation, and scholars needed coordination. They began using the stars to define true time, not the church bell. But convincing people to abandon their local hours was like asking them to stop breathing air from their own town. Time was identity. To change it was to admit your place in the universe wasn't the center. The irony, of course, is that it took trains, not philosophy, to finally synchronize the world. In the 19th century, railways spread across Europe and America, linking towns that had never cared about each other's clocks. And that's when chaos began. Imagine a station master trying to keep schedules for 20 trains, each arriving from a different town with a different time. Noon here, 11:48 there, 12:07 somewhere else. It was madness. So railway companies forced a change. They introduced something radical: standard time. It wasn't science that made us agree on time, it was capitalism. Because you can't sell tickets if nobody knows when the train leaves. In 1884, a group of scientists and bureaucrats met in Washington, D.C. to decide what time it was for the entire planet. They chose Greenwich, England as the prime meridian, 0 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds. The British Empire naturally loved this. The rest of the world grumbled, then complied. And just like that, global time was born. Humanity finally shared a single heartbeat. It wasn't perfect, but it worked well enough to keep the trains from colliding. But the transition wasn't smooth. People hated it. In rural villages, farmers refused to reset their clocks. They didn't care what London or Paris said. It was still sunrise when the roosters crowed. Even in cities, churches complained that the sacred hours of prayer were being replaced by railway time. The world was losing its soul to punctuality. But industry doesn't care about souls. It cares about schedules. The clock became king and its ticking became law. And once that happened, everything changed. Factories began to measure shifts by the hour. Workers were paid by time, not by product. Time stopped being a natural rhythm. It became a unit of currency. The phrase "time is money" wasn't a metaphor anymore. It was policy. The bells of churches were replaced by the whistles of factories. The world no longer woke up with the sun. It woke up with the sound of steam. People started living inside the clock. The day was divided into work, meals, and sleep, all ruled by gears. For the first time in history, being late became a sin outside the monastery. The Industrial Revolution didn't just build machines, it turned humans into them. You were expected to tick at the same rhythm as the clock tower above you, and as the cities grew louder, time grew quieter inside us. We stopped noticing the color of the afternoon light, or how long a shadow stretched across the street. We started glancing at pocket watches, then wristwatches, now phones, tiny prisons of seconds. The world became measurable, predictable, mechanical. The price of precision was wonder. Even art changed. Painters like Monet and Turner tried to capture the fleeting light of a single moment, because now every moment had become measurable. Music changed too. Composers wrote pieces timed to the minute. Everything was synchronized. We became creatures of rhythm but forgot the song. Yet for all our effort, time remained messy. The earth spins unevenly, seasons shift, and the planet itself slows down a fraction every year. We pretend our clocks are perfect, but even the atomic ones need adjustments. Every few years, scientists quietly add a leap second to keep Earth and time in sync. That's right, the world still doesn't tick perfectly no matter how much we pretend it does. Somewhere, even now, the universe runs a little fast or a little slow, like an old pocket watch in need of winding. And then came the watches that no longer needed winding. Quartz, digital, atomic, the dream of total control. We built devices so precise they could count time better than we could perceive it. But the more perfect the clocks became, the more imperfect our relationship with time grew. We no longer looked at it as a companion or a teacher. It became a master, a judge, a countdown, a thing to race, to kill, to waste, to lose. The medieval monk would have found this hilarious. His clock was built to remind him to pray. Ours remind us to hurry. He sought eternity. We seek efficiency. His time belonged to heaven. Ours belongs to deadlines. And yet, sometimes, when the city falls silent for a moment, late at night, after the hum of machines has faded, you can almost hear the old rhythm beneath it all. The faint echo of bells, of monks, of shadows and sundials. A slower time, a gentler one. The kind of time that doesn't tick, but breathes. The kind of time that doesn't chase you, but waits. It's still there, somewhere, beneath the noise of the modern world. Hidden in the sound of the wind or the way sunlight shifts across your wall. The age of bells, sand, and chaos never really ended. We just stopped listening to it. Chapter 4. When humans tried to fix time, and made it worse. By the dawn of the 20th century, humanity believed it had finally conquered time. We had synchronized clocks, ticking in unison across continents. We had train schedules, factory shifts, telegraphs, and pocket watches so precise that people could argue about lateness down to the minute. The sun had been replaced by brass and gears. For the first time, humans lived by numbers instead of light. It was supposed to be progress, and for a while, it felt like it. Then came Einstein, and he ruined everything. Up until that point, time had been simple, a line, a flow, a steady beat that carried everyone forward at the same pace. Then this quiet, curly-haired man from Germany looked at the universe and said, "Actually, it doesn't work like that." He told us that time was relative, that it could stretch, bend, slow down, or speed up depending on how fast you moved or how close you were to something massive. Suddenly, time wasn't a river anymore. It was a fabric, a dimension that could twist and ripple like a bedsheet in the wind. The faster you travel, the slower your clock runs. If you lived near a black hole, a single hour for you could be 1,000 years for someone else. That's not poetry, then that's physics. The universe, it turns out, doesn't care about your schedule. It's not that Einstein invented chaos. He just revealed that our tidy little seconds and minutes were never real to begin with. We had built civilization on a beautiful lie, the idea that time moves the same for everyone. And now the lie had a formula. Einstein's theory was elegant, precise, and utterly devastating to our sense of control. Because if time could bend, then what was a second really? What did it mean when the tick of your watch wasn't the same as mine? Scientists loved it. Philosophers panicked. The rest of us just ignored it and went back to work. Because what else can you do when the universe tells you that your deadlines are technically meaningless? Still, the revelation changed everything. GPS satellites now orbit Earth with atomic clocks that actually run faster than clocks on the ground, because they're farther from gravity. Engineers have to manually correct the time they transmit, or your phone's map would think you're several meters away from where you really are. Every time you check your location, Einstein is silently fixing it. You are literally standing still because someone accounted for the bending of time. But while science made peace with relativity, society went in the opposite direction. The more flexible time became in theory, the more rigid we made it in practice. We created time zones, standardized schedules, and eventually daylight saving time, humanity's most stubborn attempt to control sunlight. The logic was noble. Shift the clock an hour forward in summer to get more evening daylight. The result was madness. Twice a year, entire countries collectively pretend the sun has changed its mind. Planes are delayed, sleep is lost, coffee sales spike, and no one knows what time it is anymore. The irony is almost poetic. We twist the clocks to chase the light, forgetting that light never cared about us to begin with. Governments insisted it was for productivity. Studies later showed it saved almost no energy. What it really did was prove how addicted we are to the illusion of control. We can't make the days longer, so we move the numbers instead. It's like repainting the walls of a prison and calling it freedom. As the 20th century accelerated, so did our obsession. We invented the atomic clock, a machine so precise it won't lose a second in 300 million years. Scientists measure time now by the vibration of cesium atoms, tiny particles oscillating exactly 9,100 to 770 times per second. You can't even imagine that number. But the universe can. The strange thing is, even as our instruments grew infinitely precise, our lives became infinitely rushed. The more accurately we measured time, the less of it we seemed to have. People once woke with the sun. Now they wake with alarms. We live in an age where our bodies follow circadian rhythms older than fire, but our schedules follow digital rectangles that flash reminders every 15 minutes. The sun is no longer our guide, the screen is. We no longer measure days in warmth or light, but in notifications. Every buzz is a second dying for attention. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that time was never meant to be counted. It was meant to be lived. Ancient farmers measured time by the length of shadows. We measure it by the speed of Wi-Fi. And we're still late. In offices and factories, people started selling their time by the hour. Time became money, literally. Your paycheck is an exchange rate between your heartbeat and your employer's ambition. We used to trade goods. Now we trade moments of our lives. We don't work for survival. We work for time, renting it out in tiny slices until there's none left to keep. Einstein once said that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Maybe that's why the modern world feels so exhausting, because deep down we know he's right. We treat time as a line, but we live in circles. Every Monday is the same. Every commute, every alarm. We keep moving forward, but always in loops, chasing progress that never arrives. And so, to cope, we invented another kind of clock, the biological one. Scientists started timing not just the rotation of Earth, but the decay of our cells, the aging of our faces, the lifespan of our dreams. They call it progress, but it feels like surveillance. You used to count years by birthdays. Now apps count them for you. You used to look at the stars to know where you were in time. Now you look at your screen and see your screen time statistics. Time used to be cosmic. Now it's commercial, and still, we keep trying to fix it. We write self-help books on time management. We invent apps that promise productivity. We build calendars with color-coded blocks, squeezing meaning into boxes. We sync our clocks to the atomic heartbeat of the universe, and yet, every night, we whisper the same sentence our ancestors once did under the stars. There's never enough time. That's the great cosmic joke. The Egyptians divided the day by light. The Babylonians divided it by 60. The monks divided it by bells. Einstein divided it by gravity. And still, the one thing time refuses to be is divided. It slips through all our systems like water through fingers. The more we measure it, the more it escapes. Maybe time doesn't need fixing. Maybe it was never broken. It's us who can't stay still long enough to feel it. The monks, the sailors, the farmers, they all lived inside time. We live against it. We sprint through our lives chasing seconds we'll never catch, guided by clocks that never rest. And in the end, when the ticking stops, time will keep going exactly as it always has. Indifferent, infinite, and free. So the next time you set an alarm, remember this. You are trying to command a force that bends light. You are giving orders to something that even Einstein couldn't tame. And if you ever feel guilty for wasting time, remember, time has been wasting you too, ever since the beginning. Chapter 5. Time is an illusion, but a beautiful one. If there's one thing humans are truly good at, it's pretending that illusions are real. We invented money, borders, nations, gods, and stories, and then agreed to die for them. But of all the illusions we've built, none is more intimate, more invisible, more addictive than time. It's the one lie we all live inside of, the one dream we never wake from. Think about it. Time doesn't exist in nature. There are no numbers printed in the sky. The sun doesn't rise at 6 or set at 7. There's no cosmic calendar counting the days, no celestial clock ticking in the void. The universe doesn't care how old you are or what day it is. It just moves endlessly, without pause or schedule. It's not divided into hours or minutes. It's divided into motion and change. And yet, here we are, building our entire sense of existence around something that isn't real. Of course, not real doesn't mean not powerful. Time is the most convincing illusion we've ever created. It shapes every thought we have. It orders our memories into a sequence. It gives our lives direction, like a river we believe we're sailing down. But that river isn't flowing anywhere. It's just us, drifting in circles, calling it progress. The truth is, what we call time is really just our way of noticing change. A leaf falls, a shadow shifts, a heartbeat slows. We call that time passing, but it's just movement. Atoms rearranging, energy transferring, memories forming. The universe doesn't move through time. It creates it moment by moment, like a film projector unspooling light onto an endless screen. We call the frames seconds. The universe calls them now. We measure our lives in years, birthdays, and calendars, but the body doesn't keep track. Your cells don't know it's Monday. Your heartbeat doesn't care that it's 3:47 p.m. Time is something we built to make sense of impermanence, to name the thing that keeps slipping away. We needed language for loss, so we invented hours. Einstein once said that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. He meant it literally. Physics shows that all moments, past, present, and future, exist simultaneously in the fabric of space-time. You're not moving through time. You're standing still while everything else unfolds around you. Every second you've lived, every memory you've ever had, every version of yourself that once existed, they're all still there, frozen in the structure of the universe. We call it the past only because we can't visit it. But that idea, while scientifically correct, is also unbearably poetic. It means that somewhere in the geometry of reality, a younger you is still laughing in sunlight. Somewhere your first kiss is still happening. Somewhere, the moment you looked at the stars and felt infinite is still glowing. Time doesn't erase, it layers. We just lose the ability to see all the layers at once, and maybe that's mercy. Imagine being able to feel every moment of your life simultaneously. The pain, the joy, the fear, the beauty. It would crush us. So our minds give us the illusion of sequence. Before, after, now. It's not true, but it's bearable. The illusion of time isn't a mistake, it's a kindness. Still, the more we understand time, the stranger it becomes. Physicists talk about entropy, the measure of disorder. They say time moves forward because the universe is always falling apart, drifting from order to chaos. It's not that seconds push us ahead. It's that things break. Glass shatters but doesn't reassemble. Smoke rises but never sinks. You can remember yesterday but not tomorrow because your brain, like the cosmos, runs on entropy. Time feels like a river, but it's really a slow collapse. And yet, even in that decay, there's beauty. Every ending is also a transformation. The star that died billions of years ago became the iron in your blood. The ancient sun that lit the first shadow clock is the same star warming your skin right now. Time didn't take it away, it recycled it. We talk about running out of time, but time doesn't run out. It just changes form. It's not a resource, it's a rhythm. Maybe that's what the ancient Egyptians understood when they tied time to gods of rebirth. Maybe that's what the Babylonians felt when they divided the sky into cycles. Maybe the monks heard it in their bells, the idea that time isn't a prison but a pattern. Everything repeats. Not perfectly, but poetically. The same sunrise, the same heartbeat, the same laughter, slightly different each time, but still familiar. Modern life tries to hide that. We treat time like a straight road with signs and deadlines. We race to the future as if there's a finish line. But look closely, the road curves. It always curves. We come back to the same questions, the same mistakes, the same longings. History repeats, not because we don't learn, but because time is circular and we're caught in its orbit. It's strange, isn't it? For all our precision, we still describe time emotionally. We say it flies when we're happy, drags when we're bored, freezes when we're afraid. No scientist can explain that because it's not about physics, it's about perception. Time isn't just measured, it's felt. It stretches and compresses depending on how alive we are in the moment. A year of routine can vanish like smoke, while a single kiss can last forever. Our experience of time is proof that meaning, not measurement, defines it. And maybe that's the secret. Maybe time isn't something that happens to us. Maybe it's something we create by paying attention. When you really watch the rain fall, when you really listen to music, when you hold someone's hand and feel their pulse align with yours, time stops. Or at least it forgets to move. The clock keeps ticking, but you don't. For a moment, you and the universe agree to just exist. No past, no future, just now. That's the closest thing to immortality we'll ever have. Not endless years, but endless moments. Time doesn't need to be conquered or mastered or fixed. It needs to be noticed. That's all it ever wanted. So what is time, really? A story we tell ourselves to make sense of change. A fragile agreement between memory and motion. A cosmic metronome that keeps everything dancing in and out of existence. We invented it, feared it, worshipped it, tried to fix it. And in doing so, we made it beautiful. Because if time is an illusion, it's the only one worth believing in. Maybe that's why we keep watching sunsets. Why we still whisper, "See you tomorrow." Why we still celebrate birthdays even though they are meaningless to the stars. Deep down, we know the truth. Time isn't counting down, it's expanding. Every second is a chance to notice that we exist. So, take a breath, feel it, that's time. Not the clock on the wall, not the date on the calendar. Just that pulse inside your chest, reminding you that for one fleeting, impossible, eternal moment, you're here. And so the story of time comes full circle. From shadows cast by the first sun to atomic vibrations ticking in the dark, humanity has spent thousands of years trying to catch something that was never running. We sliced the sky into hours, the hours into minutes, the minutes into seconds, until the rhythm of the universe fit neatly into the palm of our hands. But no matter how perfectly we measure it, time still slips away, quiet and undefeated. Maybe it was never meant to be owned, only noticed. Because in the end, time isn't what passes between two moments. It's what happens inside them. The laughter, the breath, the heartbeat, the love. The things no clock can hold. So if you've made it this far, maybe take a deep breath. Let the seconds fall away. You've just spent a little of eternity listening to a story, and that means it was worth it. But the journey doesn't end here. If time shapes the waking world, then what happens when it dissolves? When we close our eyes and drift beyond it? In the next story, we'll step into that timeless place where memory, imagination, and mystery collide. The realm where time bends and reality sleeps.